Hello everyone and welcome back to Coffin History. In today's video we will be having a look at some news stories from last month, so the month of July 2019. I posted 10 stories that I liked on my Patreon page and my patrons told me which ones they were interested in the most, so from that I've chosen these 5 stories to include in the video. This creature lived 506 million years ago in the Cambrian period, and as well as being a predator, it was also well protected as it had a large shell covering its back, the tips of which jutted out towards the backside. The people who discovered it thought this shape kind of resembled the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, which they named it after, even though personally I think the resemblance is a bit of a stretch. Its full name is Camboraster falcatus, the last part referring to the Millennium Falcon. Fossils of this creature were first found in 2012 in the Canadian Rockies, a spot famous for its well-preserved Cambrian fossils. But it wasn't until 2018 that the researchers found a large group of fossils together, indicating that they lived in large groups and molted together as well. It probably used its rake-like claws to sift through the sediment on the seafloor. And of the 140 specimens that were found in this group, it appears that most adults were about the size of a person's hand, but the largest that was found measured nearly 1 foot or 30 centimeters long, which was relatively large for an animal of that time. Our next story is about one of the most elaborate Iron Age tombs that were found in Britain. Archaeologists found the grave in West Sussex back in 2008 during an excavation for a housing development. However, it took researchers nearly a decade to properly study the man's skeleton and other artifacts found in the grave. The finds include a bent sword and this elaborate bronze headdress, which was part of a helmet and back in the day would have shone like gold. In addition to this, the helmet was probably also decorated with horsehair and plumes to make it stand out even more. The analysis showed that this warrior was probably Gallic, meaning that he was from the area that is now France. He likely came to Britain to fight against or perhaps flee from Caesar's forces, which were sweeping across Western Europe during the time he lived in. The warrior might have even been a military leader for King Commius, who initially ruled in Gaul but fled to Britain after battling Caesar. In our next story we will take a look at the reconstructed face of a man that was murdered nearly 1500 years ago. After his murder, the body of the possible Pictish chieftain sat undisturbed in a cave on the Black Isle in the Scottish Highlands for over a millennia. Archaeologists found the approximately 30-year-old man's skeleton in a strange position. Rocks pinned him down on his arms and legs, and his skull was fractured, and for some reason his legs were also crossed. Forensic artists published a virtual reconstruction of his face back in 2017, but now a new analysis indicates that this man, which was dubbed Rosemarkie Man, was likely a prominent person in his community, perhaps even a member of royalty or a chieftain according to these new studies. From studying the body, they could tell that this particular Pict was pretty well off. According to the analysis, he was a big and strong man, built like a rugby player. The man was 5 foot 6 inches tall, which is 1 meter 67 centimeters, and died sometime between the year 430 and 630. The man also had a high-protein diet, which was rare for the people in that region at that time. There were also other clues that Rosemarkie Man was royalty. Besides his head wounds, there were no injuries on his body, suggesting that he wasn't a warrior or someone who did heavy labor during his lifetime. And his burial in this cave may have been purposeful as well. It could be that the people taking care of his body after he died placed him there because they believed it was the entrance to the underworld. For our next story, we go to Egypt, where divers have made a number of new discoveries while swimming through Heraklion, which is an ancient Egyptian city now submerged under the sea. Included in these new discoveries were remains of temples, golden jewelry, coins, and a missing piece of a previously discovered ceremonial boat. Heraklion was built around 700 BC. On what was then the edge of the Nile River Delta. It used to be a prominent city in its day. Cleopatra was even crowned in one of its temples, but around the year 500 the city was flooded and is now about 45 meters below sea level. Archaeologists rediscovered the city back in 2000, and since then more and more of Heraklion is slowly being discovered. During the recent excavation, multiple buildings and artifacts were found. Among the buildings that were discovered were two temples, one larger one which still had its stone columns, as well as the crumbling remnants of a smaller Greek temple. Both were buried under 3 feet or around 1 meter of sediment. Bronze coins dating to the reign of King Ptolemy II were also found, as well as pottery from the 3rd and 4th centuries BC. For our last story, we will take a look at another burial, this time from Switzerland. This woman died about 2,200 years ago and was buried in a hollowed out tree trunk which still had its bark on the exterior. The woman's remains were originally found in March of 2017 in Zurich, so they have had some time to study the remains and came to know a few things about the woman's life. An isotope analysis on her bones showed that she grew up locally, likely in the Limmat Valley. And just like Rosemarkie men, which we talked about earlier, she might have been nobility. The woman, who was about 40 years old when she died, had performed little physical labor during her lifetime. An analysis on her teeth suggests that she likely ate starchy or sweetened foods. The woman also wore bronze bracelets and a delicate bronze belt chain with pendants hanging from it. So those were the 5 news stories of last month, and I want to take this time to thank my patrons, Bishop King, and now I have a second patron as well. So a special thanks to Tyler as well for becoming a patron. If you are interested in checking out my Patreon page, there is a link in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.